Rolling.
Hey, what's up, y'all, and welcome to the Soccer Comic Rant. As you know, my name is Ian Edwards, and it's like week 94 of the shelter-in-place quarantine thing that we're doing. There's been no soccer, but, you know, there's hopes that things will be getting back to semi-normal. And if you watch or listen to this podcast, you can watch it on YouTube at Ian Edwards Comic, or you can listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Libsyn, Stitcher, and it's also available on allthingscomedy.com. And on that website, there are a ton of other comics on there: Bill Burr, Al Magical, to name a few, and Bert Kreischer. And this is like a ton of comics, and it's their podcast platform, and you can listen to their podcast there. We got some guests today. This guest, he's a ESPN analyst, used to play for United States men's soccer team. He's a Polish background. I'm definitely going to mess his name up. Janusz Michallik.
That's very good. Close enough.
I'm impressed.
I nailed it. All right. That doesn't mean I won't mess it up later on during the podcast. I just
It's
focus.
good. It's good for comedy, right? I mean, it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. You get it. You good. And Martin Harris, another Polish guy with an English-sounding ass name.
That's funny.
Yeah, he got a straight up. There's two Polish guys, one with a straight up Polish name, but he's been in America, and then there's American citizen, and the newer Polish guy has the more American name.
I can be in charge of pronouncing Martin's name, so it's so good.
Yeah,
Oh, so
but
it's Martin?
I just have to remind you, Ian, I'm also a U.S. citizen for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
No, I know. I said the newest U.S. citizen.
Yeah, the Marcin sounds so much nicer than Martin anyway. So
Yeah, a girl I recently dated told me the same thing. I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
there you go. My cousin, I was Janusz, and the other one is Marcin. So it's all good. I like that name.
Is Martin the English translation of Marcin?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it's probably as close as it comes, right?
Yeah, it is.
I tell you, when I first came to this country, they were trying to make me take Ian, as if Ian was the closest thing to Janusz. I don't think it is, but there's, then it was Jan and.
What lays?
I think Jonas would be the closest one, right?
What's that?
I think Jonas would be the closest one. No?
Maybe. I didn't even think of that. Nobody suggested that. Thank God.
Who suggested Ian?
Well, it's just people that I first met, people that when I first arrived, you know what I mean? And I started playing, and they had all kinds of issues pronouncing it. They were trying to make it easier for themselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
But I was like, nah.
Yeah. So you were born in Poland, and you came here in the 80s. Right?
Yeah, 83 was the very first time I actually came here, but I went back because I had, my career in Poland was pretty good, and I was just getting going, 16, 17-year-old, and I went back, and then I came back the next year in 84, and then after, I stayed. I didn't go back after that. So yeah, 84, that's, I've been here since then for good.
Since 84. And then what teams and what level were you playing in Poland?
Well, when I first came in, back then, funny enough, there was no outdoor soccer in this country. The only league that existed, and it was a significant one, but it was MISL, which was Major Indoor Soccer League, and the first place I went in was Cleveland, the Mistake on the Lake, when they called it way back when, and I loved it. We played in the old Richfield Coliseum. And here's a funny story for you. Cleveland Cavaliers were begging us for tickets. Well, I'd like to embellish this story. I don't know begging, but asking us for tickets, because if they got 5,000 people in the NBA back then, 6,000, they were lucky.
Oh, so who
Our
was
average 18,000. Remember a player by the name, I never forget him because of the name, and he was actually quite good. Mm-hmm. But the star player was World B. Free for Cleveland Cavaliers, a little point guard. It was excellent, by the way. Probably their best player, not that I remember from them, but that was the reality. It was, even though there wasn't what we call proper football or soccer in this country, Major
Right.
Indoor Soccer League was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely the best time of my life, believe it or not,
Okay.
in Richfield Coliseum.
It was that huge. What were they doing for marketing back then? Or what? How come people were into soccer like that?
Well, I think, back then, remember, I mean, the American audiences, I don't want to say weren't that sophisticated, but to a degree they weren't because, they were used to fast-paced games. So this was like NHL, this was like hockey, right? We had the boards, same setup. I mean, some leagues are still playing till this day, smaller, but you basically have the hockey boards. You play, 5 plus a goalkeeper, and the scores are 6-4, 7-5, 8-6. So this was exciting to people. It was indoors, right? So again, in Cleveland during winter time, no issues whatsoever being being there. It was just fast paced, and there were a lot of good players in that league from all over the world. So as I said, I mean, we averaged 18,000 every game, and when like New York
Yeah.
Cosmos came to town, we'd have 20,000 easily. I mean, sold
How
out.
many games a season?
I don't remember, quite a bit. I can't remember back, that's a long time ago, but yeah, I don't remember, to be honest, 34.
Did-
I was only 17 years old, and actually at the beginning I couldn't even play because I didn't have the paperwork. And
I just want to add to it because I just spoke a couple of weeks ago with our mutual friend John Kowalski, who later coached American national team, another Polish American guy, and he told me all about this indoor soccer thing because that's how he became a well-known coach, and he actually coached the national team to silver and bronze medal in the World Championships in indoor soccer. But they were actually giving contracts like Stanisław Terlecki, the famous Polish guy, that couldn't go to the World Cup in 1982 because of his political involvement with Solidarity. He was suspended. So they brought him on a contract. They gave him $200,000 to play one season indoor soccer, where Mario Lemieux at the time playing close by hockey didn't make that money, and he was the star of the NHL.
And that was nothing. $200,000. That wasn't even a high salary. I mean, it was amazing salaries in that league. I can tell you that 400, 500,000, $500,000. I don't want to say it wasn't unusual, but there are a number of players that would earn that money. Teams were everywhere. San Diego Soccer's famous team, of course. So many great players back then. The Baltimore Blast, believe it or not, Wichita Wings in small Wichita. I mean, they had a team, my goodness, sold out every game. Pittsburgh Spirit, John Kowalski, my former coach, who helped me a lot. Being another Pittsburgh Spirit was an amazing team. New York Cosmos, as I've mentioned, obviously everybody knew them. And at that time, they were forced to play indoors because there was no outdoor league like the NASL, where Cosmos, of course, with Pele and all the best players played. So that was my beginning. That's, when I came in, I had zero idea what indoor soccer was. I mean, I had, when I first came to Cleveland and I saw the concept of everything, I mean, I had an imagination, but it's one thing to imagine something, and it's another to start playing it when you've never played. You have to use the boards for rebounds, and there's tactics in it. It's just amazing, but it was tremendous.
Did you play against Preki? Was Preki in the league?
No, Preki towards the end. No, I played him in MLS, but he was with Tacoma Stars, another great team. But no, I didn't play at the time because as I said, I came in, I had a bad knee injury. I mean, I was out for 12, 13 months. Then there was another indoor soccer league to rehab, which was AISA, American Indoor Soccer Association. And then after that, I started playing outdoors because the outdoors leagues came around, and then, I was called into national team and U.S. national team. So, the indoor part went away. But again, another very quick, funny story with Cleveland Force. Our mascot was Darth Vader. The music was from the Star Wars, when they dim the lights, just like they do in NHL and everything, and the smoke comes up. I mean, I get goosebumps right now just talking about it. Yeah. It was the most amazing thing. Matter of fact, George Lucas and the company later sued the Cleveland Force. For many years they were okay with it, but when we came out and when we had 18,000 people, 20,000. They would sell out the lightsabers, and you'd see 20,000 in a pitch dark Coliseum. I mean, the first 5 minutes of the game, you were ready to kill everyone. I mean, you're so pumped, with the Star Wars music in the background. was just a great show, the sort of show that you expect from Americans, right?
It's hilarious. How many people were on the teams back then?
Well, you usually use 2 lines of 6. Well, the goalkeeper never changed, but you had 5. So I mean, you have 2 lines. It's 10. There's always 2 or 3 extra players in there. But you played just like hockey. Imagine hockey. Uh, Hockey usually had 3 to 4 lines, right? But 3 we'd have. I don't remember having more than that. So, but just imagine hockey just played on back then the old AstroTurf.
Right.
With the hockey boards. Goals are obviously bigger than hockey goals, but still not regulation. And yeah, that ball was pinging everywhere.
Did they have a penalty box?
Yes, you get 2 minutes. You get 2 minutes, just like in hockey. Yeah.
Oh shit.
And then you had team advantage, or 5 against 4 or 4 against 5 if you went men down. Same idea. You had to defend it with less. The player less, same ideas.
Damn. So what do you think, like, it sounds like that league was going great, right? What do you think happened to it? Like, why did it dissolve? Why didn't it grow?
It was growing again, but I've been asked that question. Just recently, about this, and I really don't have an answer for that because it was so popular. Now I came into the league. Almost towards the end. I mean, it still went on for another 4, 5, or 6 years, but you could see that it was just dropping off a little bit. And that's sometimes hard to explain. I don't know. There's some markets that it was fine, but just like anything else, there are a couple other markets that was trying to drop off. And again, I think the only way I can say this, it was that the culture that we often talk about in this country about soccer, even now in Major League Soccer, when people try to compare soccer in America with Europe, we often go, well, I mean, Major League Soccer, it's only 25 years old. When you compare it to England, Germany, or anywhere else, over 100 years old. It's not easy to build that culture. It's much better now. But I think back then, when things go against you in any walk of life, right?
Right.
I think it's the culture that sustains you.
Right.
And although it was going very, very well, I just think maybe the 2 or 3 markets that were going away, maybe there weren't 2 or 3 markets that were ready to step in and take over the team. And, you lose a little bit of interest, and very much like NASL, the old league, salaries were high. The business model was probably not sustainable with the lack of culture. I mean, that's the best way I can explain that.
No.
I can add what John told me, which is very interesting. He said that when they were in Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, the owner had both teams, the indoor soccer club and Pittsburgh Penguins, and the indoor soccer club was getting more people to watch games. Like, let's say they had 10 to 11,000 people watching indoor soccer, and only 4,000 or 5,000 were watching hockey. And they had Mario Lemieux and a very good team, and the owner decided to sacrifice the indoor soccer team to pump up the hockey team, because he felt it's a better investment, as a business model.
Well, yeah, and the culture again, right? Same situation as I was saying. Cavaliers. I mean, terrible crowds in comparison to us. But at the end of the day, if you're going to put a bet on something, in particular on that time, even more so, even in this time as well, right? It's still the NBA, right? It's still the NHL. It's still something that the American fans know more and maybe trust more.
Yeah, it's just put the money into 2 Canadian sports, basketball and hockey.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Because a Canadian invented basketball. It's like, fuck this European British sport.
Now I know what you're all about. But no, fair play.
It's just crazy. Like, a movie should be made about this league, the way you describe it. You know what I mean? It's like, you ever seen that movie, A League of Their Own? Mm-hmm. And when you see that movie, you realize the scope of what was going on back there. This was a moment in time that a lot of people don't know about, but if they did know about it, it'd be amazing. So you're playing in the indoor league, and you're from Poland, and you're here, and you see the league going away. Did you panic, or did you know something else was coming?
I was too young and naive to even think about that. You know what I mean? Like I was having fun. So it was a new normal, sort of like what we're going through now for me. Carefree, really attitude for me. It was a big transition for me because I never thought I'd be here. And when you think about it, when my father played in Poland, I mean, he's playing in Polish First Division. He was captain of a First Division club. He played for Poland. I mean, it was, pretty big name, or big enough name that people would know him back then. And I never thought I'd be in America facing all these decisions and these situations. There was a part of me when I made a decision to stay where I knew at that particular time that what you think of big soccer, that was kind of over for me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, by making that decision, people very often ask me if I have any regrets of not staying in Europe and all that. I mean, I don't, because I was able to play for the United States national team. Because of it, I've been to, 50 countries around the world. It's been a great experience. There's been huge ups and huge downs and all of that.
Right.
But when people ask me, well, if you stayed in Europe, would you be playing for Poland? Would you be playing this, that, or the other? Of course, one never knows that. But I knew deep down that it was going to be much tougher. Because think about it. I mean, in those days, we didn't have internet. We didn't have anything. We hardly had video. I mean, nobody from Europe or Poland or any other country that would be interested in my services because, let's say, I was a good player. Right. How do you go about seeing me? You know what I mean? It wasn't that easy to just hop over and have a look at me. And the television wasn't there where you could watch any league anywhere around the world like we can right now in terms of scouting, right? So I was worried, but again, because of the injuries, I knew I had a long way to go. At that time, remember, I had total knee reconstruction. So, that was, I remember then everybody in any sport, if you had anterior cruciate or more, that's career ending. Remember those days, right? So right. I really didn't worry about the league so much. I worried more about how do I get back to even playing, you know what I mean? So that was my goal. That's what I was driven by.
And you played for like 3 indoor teams in that league, right?
In 2 different leagues.
In 2 different leagues. And then where did you go to from there?
A lot of luck. And I'll bring, Marcin just spoke about John Kowalski, who played an incredibly important role in my career in this country. Incredibly. Because first of all, he was the one that actually got me to Cleveland because I wanted to go to Pittsburgh because there were 6 or 7 Polish players. He was a Polish coach and he had 6 or 7 significant players. There weren't just any Polish players. There were really big names in Poland who, for a short period of time, came to the United States and played indoors. But because of that,
let me just throw in one thing, especially for Ian and for American viewers. It's mid-'80s. Where Poland is behind Iron Curtain. I remember because I was a little kid back then. It's a huge economical crisis. Like you cannot buy anything at the store, and zloty, Polish zloty is very devalued. So a lot of players were pretty much escaping Poland because the difference in wages, the difference in lifestyle. They could even go to like on a contract, let's say $50,000-$60,000 in America, and they're set for life in Poland. Okay.
How did they get out?
Either they had to negotiate with the government. Some of them did, or just escape. Some escaped.
Well, and I think a lot of them were over 30. Remember, there was a rule in the poll, because I kind of, I lived, behind the Iron Curtain and all that. Look, they were on incredible money. Even looking back, when you think about it, because the Polish money were so devalued. I remember when I first came here in 83 and 84, if I went back to Poland with $100, I would have lived for a month. No, it's crazy money. It's crazy what it was. So for those guys to go anywhere, they happened to come here to the United States because that was the opportunity. If they were anywhere else, the American dollar is this magical currency, as we all know it, and we're finding that out right now. It kind of, it's better than gold, isn't it? Think about that. And in so many funny ways, it hasn't changed all that much. But those were significant decisions. But yeah, people back home, to those 7 Polish players that were in Pittsburgh, probably were saying, "You crazy? You're banishing yourself for life." but they couldn't really, once they started doing the math in, in what those players came for, it was crazy to think about that they were earning that sort of money playing indoor soccer in the United States in the 80s. It really, even now, I'm laughing at this. It's a really good joke.
I know, but it is funny because like you're 30, so you're at the end of your playing days, so you get to make more money at half the length of the field. So you run less, you work less. It's like a perfect scenario. And
where do I sign up, right? I mean,
sign up. How do I cross this border and get out of this country? Yeah, like I actually get paid more for doing way less. I don't have to run this whole length of this field.
Well, and that's part of the problems with the American leagues, because the old NASL, I don't know if you remember, the NASL where, a giant stadium, Pele, and every 77,000 people, that was the same story. I mean, they paid so much money for players that really were towards the end of their career, right? I mean, it's the only time, and perhaps that's why for many years, these leagues didn't survive or couldn't survive really, right? Because it is a business at the end of the day. So it's no different there, I suppose, with those leagues that ultimately, even though the league seems successful, 18,000, as I mentioned, just about everywhere you go, it sells out. But, these players, a lot of these players really just came here to make the money, and they always knew that they just want to get back. So they didn't really leave anything behind, did they?
Right.
A lot, not all.
And it's just crazy that, like, Martin was talking about the guy that got paid $200,000, and you talk about some people getting paid $400,000, which is kind of like more than some MLS players get paid now. And
yes, the young players.
Players.
But the Major League Soccer has grown to a level where now you have millionaires, right? I mean, there's still obviously young players, but again, I think that the concept and the reason why Major League Soccer has survived for 25 years now, unlike any other previous leagues. I mean, I've been part of more defunct soccer leagues in this country than I can think of, right? There was a reason for that, because there wasn't a business sense. There wasn't a long-term vision. And as we know in any business, you've got to have a vision. You got to stick to it. You know that in time, you're going to have bumps on the road, right? And by the way, Major League Soccer has had that, right? Remember when I first played, the league started in 1996, with 10 teams, and a few years later, Tampa Bay Mutiny and then Miami Fusion obviously didn't make it, right? If it wasn't for Phil Anschutz, who I think and all the listeners knows who he is, and maybe even Robert Kraft, the Revolution owner. Anschutz at the time owned the LA Galaxy. He owned 3 teams, Dallas, I think, and Kansas City at the time. I mean, those guys let the league survive, and then throughout they found a system, which, as we know, is much different than any other soccer system in the world. And maybe there is a reason why Major League Soccer is around, because that vision somehow, and by the way, we don't all love it, but continues to thrive. But yeah, you're quite right. There's still a lot of players that didn't make that kind of money that, say, some of the indoor players made it.
Right. So how did you, and you played for the US men's team. So how did that, so let's go to the MLS first. So where were you before the MLS started?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the funny part. That's the comedy bit on here is because, as we mentioned, there was really no league. There was no outdoor league.
Right.
But I think the biggest catalyst, I became part of U.S. national team.
Right.
And we were paid by the federation, which is unheard of in our game. If you play for Germany, you don't get paid by Germany. You get paid by Bayern Munich or Schalke or whatever club you play for, right? Now, you may make some bonuses.
Oh, you do? If you play for Germany, you get paid by Bayern Munich?
Yeah, you're part of the club. The clubs pay you money. You represent the country. It's a little bit like, Michael Jordan was the Chicago Bull, but when he went to the Olympics to represent the country, he didn't get paid. There may have been some bonuses from sponsor this or that or the other, right? Right. But when we played for U.S. national team ahead of the 1994 World Cup, we were paid by United States Soccer Federation, which is very unusual. But the only reason that happened is because there's no other leagues. There were no clubs that you could play for that would pay you the money.
Right.
So, and the reason the federation did that, because of course they were tasked with the 1994 World Cup,
Right.
which was massive, and in many ways, I don't want to skip over the national team, but it was the biggest catalyst for Major League Soccer, because once you have such an event, till this day, maybe you may have to do the research, but it still may be the most successful World Cup in terms of finances of them all.
Right.
I don't know, maybe one bypassed that, because of inflation and time and all that, but not many. It's still probably till this day, because of the massive stadiums we've had here, all of them were sold out. It was a successful World Cup. But that was the catalyst to start the league, because obviously, the U.S. Soccer Federation made a lot of money, and it would be smart to use the momentum of the World Cup to start the league, to see if it finally catches on. And even though they delayed it a year, because originally Major League Soccer was supposed to start in 95, right after the World Cup, but the teams weren't ready yet. We started in 96. But for 4 years, I was employed by U.S. Soccer Federation and played for U.S. soccer team. And it almost felt like a club team. It didn't feel like playing for your country. I mean,
Right.
in 4 years, less than 4 years, I have 44 caps, or
Yeah.
the international appearances, which is it's very high. And that doesn't include the games I've played against club teams, which
Yeah.
doesn't count, they don't count as a cap, but I played probably additional 20 or something like that against the Juventus or AC Milan of the world, or Monaco, or whatever.
So, it raises two questions. So I guess the first question is, so this is not even a question. So in my mind, this is how I figured. I thought that they said we're going to award the U.S. the World Cup, but the U.S. has to start a league. Was that a part of the deal to host the World Cup, or was it a league and idea afterwards?
I think it was not, I should refresh my memory, but I'm sure there was some sort of a language there for that. And you may be quite right. Not, I should know these things, but hey, time moves on. But I bet because the FIFA and international bodies always. I mean, obviously, the reason they went to United States, it's not only because they knew that they were gonna, there's gonna be Chiching at the end of it, but also they saw this as a massive underserved market, right? I mean, here we are, 300 some million people, of course, right? The richest country in the world. So this is the biggest sport in the world, bar none, and yet it's not successful. So I bet you're right. I think they must have put that, I'm almost 99% sure that you're quite right.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
I remember because I watched that World Cup.
Say again?
And I remember the president of the American Federation, when he had this speech right ahead of the World Cup, and he said, "Now I'm going to deliver on my final promise, and within a year we'll start a league in America."
Yeah, Alan Rothenberg. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it was in there. I'm sure it was in there. I just don't want to, because I can't remember. But I'm sure you're quite right for bringing this up. Good on you.
No, it's just interesting just how things lead to other things, because I was born in England and raised in Jamaica. I played soccer all my life, and I came here and there was no league, so it's just like there was no hope of like going anywhere with soccer as far as I concerned. So I would watch some of the indoor league whenever games would just pop up randomly if you had cable. You know what I mean? And then they started like showing, I think it was Fox, I can't remember, like just more highlights of European soccer, which led into the World Cup, which led into the league, to the MLS. So where were you before you got called up for the national team? And what were you doing? Where were you playing?
Yeah, I think I was just finishing. I was like in purgatory, I think, somewhere in there, because it was like a year or two, or just playing local, like, you know what I mean? There were a couple leagues again. I think the A League started a little bit, so there was an outdoor league, but it was one of those. They called it a pro, but it was more semi-pro. I think that was kind of in between. So in so many ways, the U.S. national team saved me there, because John Kowalski, as we've mentioned, he was the interim coach before Bora Milutinovic, famous coach who's taken 5 different countries to the World Cup, came over. I think everybody knew that he was coming, but somebody had to take the team in the interim right after 1990 World Cup in Italy ended, and Bob Gensler left the job. They knew Bora Milutinovic was coming for this big project, which was the 94 World Cup in the United States, and John Kowalski was kind of taking care of the team in the interim. So, but just before that, yeah, I was playing here and there and everywhere, but nothing to speak of. It wasn't anything super well organized because, as I said, there weren't any leagues.
So that must be like a crazy feeling. Like, describe the feeling of like you're in purgatory, and you go from purgatory to the call for U.S. men's national team, even though it's a thing, but it's kind of not a thing, but it's a huge ass thing because they never held a World Cup before. Just how does that feel?
Huge ass doesn't even begin to say how that was. Yeah, because I didn't anticipate it either. Not at all. Do you know what I mean? Because first of all, the story with John Kowalski also was that when John first contacted me, it was actually, he was taking the U.S. team to play Poland in Warsaw.
Oh, shit.
And he called me to see if that he wanted to take me there.
Right.
Which would have been amazing. The game was at Legia Warsaw, my biggest rival anyway, but in the city that I lived, all my life basically. Right. I remember my future roommate, Bruce Murray, scored in that game. Actually, U.S. beat Poland 3-2 in that game. Oh. But I didn't go because I didn't have the paper. I didn't have a passport.
Right.
Now, I was lucky in a way that because, remember back then, it may be different now, I don't know. Martin, maybe you know these things, but back then, first of all, you had to have the green card.
Right.
Which I had. I was here legally. But in order to gain citizenship, you had to have that green card for 5 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I was just in the process of 5 years, but I wasn't doing this to become a member to play for U.S. Soccer. I was just doing it because I needed a passport. So the coincidences in all of it are mind-boggling. Not that you mention it. I never really thought about it this way, but it's just amazing. Yeah, because it could have just as easy been me playing in semi-pro leagues for the rest of my life, and we're not having this conversation, and I'm nobody anyway, but I would have been even less than anybody for the most part, but everybody has a story like this, right? I mean, it's almost something has to work and something has to happen. So when John called me, I said, oh my God, but John, when is the trip? And whatever he said, yeah, a couple of weeks. I'm like, I'm getting my passport anytime, but I don't know when that's going to happen. Right. I didn't get the passport in time. I didn't go. But, a couple months later, he called, they called me in. The new coach came in. There's a big camp in Colorado Springs, and the rest is history. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
That's great. That's great, man. How was, like, the first day in camp or just camp period? How many players did they call? Did you know a lot of them from playing around, or?
Didn't know anybody. Just, well, I don't want to say anybody. A couple of players I knew, but yeah, I mean, it was totally different. Look, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, the new coach called most of the players from the 1990 World Cup in Italy, which makes sense, right? You want to give those players benefit of the doubt. I think most, not everybody, but most of them. Mm-hmm. And then John Kowalski at the time was kind of in charge, because I remember talking to him. He could, before all that happened, Bora Milutinovic has asked him for additional 20, 30 names or 40, whatever it was, right. Even maybe more than that, maybe 50 or 60, just the names that he may be calling as he starts his journey with this team. So I think when we went to Colorado Springs, again, I want to say there was maybe 35 players, 35 to 40 players, because we went there for 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, there's going to be the first game at Mile High Stadium back then, the old Mile High Stadium where the Denver Broncos played, against Uruguay. And I remember the conversation because, first of all, it was my first camp, but I remember when we first got there, right? You look around, there's 35, 40 players, only 11 play, right? Only 18 on the bench. But coach very early laid out what's going to happen. He says, obviously, we're going to, 11 players. He didn't have to say that. That's obvious. But we're going to have 18 players on the bench, which we're going to dress 18 players the way we say it. I think he might have said there's going to be additional, I think, 5 or 6 players that we're going to have in in the stands, meaning that they would probably get a chance to go on to the next game,
Right.
which was Argentina and Palo Alto, and the rest is going to go home.
Damn.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I just, even if I sit in the stands, I'll be happy
Yeah. Damn.
as they can get. And I did enough in that camp that not only, I was there in the starting 11 and played the whole game. So, but that's how it was. But I didn't know much or didn't know anybody. My English still, questionable. My English was questionable at the time. But again, when you're young, you don't really care. You love the game. You play it hard. You want to make sure that you stay there. And I've done enough at that time to warrant even the start. And then we played Argentina, I think a week later or 2 weeks later in Palo Alto, which is, imagine, your first two games that you play internationally are against Uruguay, won the first World Cup, and then Argentina, of course, if you remember the 78 and
they were the top
Mario Kempes, who's my colleague at ESPN, Mario Kempes that made me cry in 1978, scoring against Poland 2 goals, and and here we are. So yeah, it was very significant. And
crazy. Who did you play against in that second game for the U.S.? Who was on the Argentinian team?
Oh, I'm terrible in this. I'm terrible. I mean, who was it?
Check it out.
You check it out. What's his name? The center. I'm terrible with names.
Terrible at that time.
I'm good. Like once, if I'm on the shows and all that, I write it. Then everything comes back. But oh my God, what's his name was incredible.
Listen, you had a lot of soccer history in your head. You've forgotten a lot of stuff, gotten a lot more new information in. I feel you.
But I should remember these things. But oh my God, because later I played Argentina again, and the likes of Claudio Caniggia, he was on that team. I remember. So I mean, I played Argentina maybe even 3 times. So we played him in Saudi Arabia once again. So many games. Yeah, and I'm getting old, so maybe that's what I'm forgetting. But the center back, I can't believe I remember. I should remember because Argentina has a special place. One of my favorite players, or best, I'm a defender, best defenders in the world was Daniel Passarella, a famous player. So yeah. I can tell you that it was significant. You know what I do remember? That one is for you. My last game ever towards the end of '94 was against Jamaica in Kingston. I'll never forget that. Frankie Klopas, who's been a coach in MLS, now is an assistant coach at Chicago Fire, scored a hat-trick there. We beat, I played Jamaica many times, so that's the one that we won. Dwight York was still part of that team, but I remember because it was just Jamaica. I mean, I'll never forget that trip. Just driving towards the stadium, the Bob Marley thing, and that was the first time I played against Jamaica in Jamaica, right? First and last, obviously. And I'll never forget because Frankie Klopas, for those people that know, is just the funniest guy. Great guy, great player, great coach, and just a all-around great guy. It's funny as heck. And I was sitting, and we drove into the stadium. By Bob Marley, that statue that he has there. And we go for a warm-up. And I don't know if there's still one, but there was a track and field, track around the state. And they were these massive speakers. I mean, I'm talking like 8-foot tall speakers, of course, with reggae music. But they were blasting so hard. I remember going like, I can't warm up. And it's just, I mean, not that the music was, but it was just, typical stuff. And of course, I would remember this game because it was my last ever for the U.S. national team, sadly. But, that's what it was. But the vision of those speakers and the sound of those speakers, it was just the funniest thing because we're like, it's almost like, like some sort of a way of psyching us out for a friendly game that was meaningless. It wasn't, of course. It's all the music over there.
Guys, I found the game. So U.S. lost 1-0. The manager for Argentina was Alfio Basile, and from the notable players that started for Argentina, Sergio Goycochea.
Yeah.
As a goalkeeper.
Senegal. What's his name?
Oscar Ruggeri.
Ruggeri, Oscar, yeah, no, that's the one.
Ruggeri played. Sergio Berti played. Fabian Armando Basualdo played in this game, and Carlos Alberto Enriquez. So those were the world champions. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember that. You know, maybe it's all a blur, because I remember at the time. I mean, it's just think about it. A kid, I grew up always thinking that I'll be playing for Poland. You know what I mean? My dad played a couple of times, and I played for the junior Polish national team. And the memories of '74 and that wonderful Polish team, and '78 and '82 in Spain when Poland came in third. When you play in the streets, you yell out the names of the Kazdenas and Lubańskis and the famous Polish players. And here I am, playing for the United States, but yet it was just crazy, because the road to that, as you've mentioned, was just incredible. It was a labyrinth of some crazy stuff that needed to happen for me to be playing in my first two caps against Uruguay and Argentina. It really, in so many ways, was surreal.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's like, so I'm in comedy, and it's funny out here because it's just entertainment, period. You understand that not everybody who's talented in this field is going to make it.
Absolutely.
But you figure, like in sports, and maybe it's because I'm thinking about everything that they have in place now, that you think that everybody who's good at a sport will make it at a sport. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like you're good, but you almost fell through the cracks. And it's like, and that's just a scary thing to think about. Then, like, about all the other talented people, like, that didn't know, the assistant coach, that like fall through the cracks in a sport where, if you're good, like, the talking should be done on the pitch, and then you should be in the thing. You should just be on the team. It's just like, it's like a hand reaches out and pulls you out. But I guess that's a part of the sport, like the assistant coach seeing you play, having experience with you, and like, this guy, I guess that's the safe.
I think it's part of life. It's part of anything. You're quite right. I mean, there were ups, and I was on this team for 4 years, and I was one of the last cuts, and I didn't make it to the World Cup.
Right.
Absolutely devastated, right? But you can look at it in two different ways, and yours is, it's just like anything, right? I mean, you need that little bit of a luck to get there. As always, it's much harder to stay there, which I think I've done that part. But at the end of the day, it's what you just said. It's sometimes I've had a lot of luck, but that last bit of luck maybe escaped me, right? I don't blame anybody. That's up to me. But as you said, there's so many talented people. But when you look at sports, and maybe even everyday life, in sports, it's not always the best 11, 15, 20, or 23 players or people. It has to be a team. And there's, I might have been better than so-and-so, but there was something there that was missing, maybe positioning, maybe, although I was, jack of all trades and I could play everywhere, but there was something there. And it really wasn't against me, right? I mean, I was this close. It could have been me, and nobody would have said anything. Because back then, those last 2 or 3 decisions could have gone a million different ways for about 3 or 4 of us, right? And whichever way it went, I don't think many would have questioned it.
Right.
That's how close it is in life.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, Janusz, about this. As you said, the chemistry of a team and the way the team has to be built. The very famous omission, 1978, Menotti with Argentina, he didn't pick young Maradona, that was already considered the biggest talent and probably the best player they had. But he felt like he didn't fit into the group of veteran players he had. And at the end of the day, he won the World Cup with the group of the veteran players in 1978. And then 8 years later, Maradona had his moment, but it was a highly controversial move. He just didn't feel like Maradona, being such an individualistic type of player, he felt that he might ruin the sort of chemistry and something they prepared to work as a unit and in 1978.
Yeah, with him it would have been because everybody knew that he was going to make it. If not this one, the next time. But I think sometimes it's, and it wasn't me, because I wasn't going to question that, but you have to remember that, you know, you have some chiefs and you have to have some Indians, but sometimes the Indians don't want to be Indians, you know, even though it's obvious to everybody. So it's funny how these decisions are being made. You look at now current market and you look at transfer rumors and you say, well, that player would fit there greatly. And, you know, some coach may come out and say, well, but is he willing to sacrifice? Is he willing to bide his time? And, you know, people sometimes say that they are in order to get what they want to get, but once they're there, they can't do it. And it's very hard to decide and say to yourself, you know, is that player really going to do what he says he's going to do? Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp is a good example. If you believe the facts that, you know, Timo Werner from RB Leipzig is a target supposedly for Liverpool, right? But I mean, here's Timo Werner, who in his own right is just a tremendous player, right? But if you look at Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah, and Robbie Firmino, he's going to have to sit. He's going to get his time, but, you know, he's not used to it. Now, for all I know, he's going to say, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice. I want to get there. And he's going to do what he says, but you just don't know these things. So it's a judgment call very often. And it happened to me, not just there, but in a lot of the teams where you kind of, you have to look at it as a whole and say, and how, you know, how is this going to keep on chugging if you pick, you know, sometimes with the national team, some coaches bring a younger player, like, right? I mean, who knows that he won't be playing, but maybe you want to get him ready into that atmosphere of what the big time means, because he's going to benefit being the 22nd, 23rd player. And even though he will never play a minute, just being amongst the players, seeing the competition, seeing the pump and the 80,000 people, that may benefit him 4 years later, right?
Yeah, I remember 1998 when France won the World Cup. They skipped a couple of players.
Cantona Ginola.
Yeah, they skipped some players and they won. And then 4 years later, they brought pretty much every good player they had, every best player. They created like this all-star team, and they didn't make it out of the group. Even the last World Cup, when France won the World Cup, they didn't pick Benzema.
Right, because he had that black man with
Right, yeah, but see, that's, you know, I think people know but often forget how that works, right? You've mentioned, you know, Benzema, that's obvious. And I mean, look at, we're just watching, you know, Last Dance, right? I mean, look at the Olympics, Michael Jordan, you look at Isaiah Thomas, right? I mean, it's such an important thing. I mean, because there's so many egos, so many type of personalities, right? And believe me, I don't care what player. I remember almost every game that I played. Forget the national team, forget just anywhere. Right. You always think that you should be in the starting 11. And when you don't, things go through your head. Why not? I can, and some people can deal with that and say, I'll show you next. And some players will always look for that excuse. You know, the role of a manager, it goes really, really far beyond X's and O's. And that's why I truly never really wanted to be part of it. I've coached on the youth level, but even there, I mean, I don't know if there's anything worse than being a coach or a manager of the team. To become as successful as some do, man.
You got to be cutthroat.
Oh, and then you say to yourself, you go home and you think, and you know what goes through your head? What decision should I make? If I do this, I'm going to piss off so-and-so. If I do this. And not everybody's cut out for that. I'm telling you, I couldn't.
I guess there's a bunch of questions I want to ask you, because let me ask you this one. I hope I don't forget the other one. So, and this goes with the coaching question thing that you're bringing up, because you're almost on the World Cup team. The World Cup is going to be played in America. You're right there. How does the coach cut you? What does he say? Like, you're the last cut. And it could be, this meeting could be the greatest moment of your life or the worst. Did you know before you went in? Like, how?
I mean, I was one of the last ones. There were people previous to that. You know, it's like deja vu. I've been asked this question a million times, and I don't have an answer to it, because really there isn't. And you'll find, you know, I just did this last week, and same story. There was no words, because, you know, Bora Milutinovic and I were close. I mean, when I say close, I think he identified with me a little bit, because, you know, he was a Yugoslav, you know, I was Polish, you know, my name is Michallik. I think maybe he picked me because he thought I was Serbian, because the first time he saw me, he called me Michallic, because that's in his language, but so it wasn't an easy decision. I don't want to go too deep because there's other, Milutin Soskic, who was our goalkeeper coach. I was very close friends with him and his family. He lived in the same complex as we did. And, we all, including myself, helped out a little bit. My wife was out there and his wife, because the languages were close enough that we could communicate. And, Polish, Serbian, Yugoslavian type of thing, because a lot of words are the same.
Right.
So I know it wasn't an easy decision, and the decision happened, on the beach. I forgot the name of that beach. It was a park. We were close to Laguna Beach. That's where we lived, not far away from it, in Dana Point, in California. And Jeff Agus, I think, found out at the same time in the last meeting. Maybe Desmond Armstrong as well. I don't know what he said to them. I never asked Jeff Goose, as we call him. I should have, but I see him every once in a while. But with me, he said nothing. I remember we were sitting on this big rock on the beach, and there were no words. I knew what it meant because I saw what was happening towards the end of practice. He was keeping a couple of us back, and you know that the day is coming. And we, just before practice started, another one of our teammates, Brian Quinn, who lives in San Diego now and coaches, I think, University of San Diego or San Diego State. I can't remember. He's got a club there. He found out before we even left for practice. We saw him in the dressing room. He was devastated, and he didn't even get to go with us. He was told just before it. I don't know if he was called in by the coach before we even got there, but we saw him in the dressing room, absolutely devastated. So we knew it was coming, right? And but there were no words. I mean, there's nothing. We did kind of, I may have asked him why, what should I, but there was nothing said. It was just, I knew, he knew it was a tough decision.
Right.
He didn't truly, because, there is, when it comes to that last one or two, or whatever it is, as I've said, it's a fine line.
Right.
So I never got the answer. I never really asked for it. I never really wanted to know in many ways.
Right.
To be honest, the way I look at it over the years, I never wanted to make excuses, right? Because I could come up with some little bit of a story that was probably believable, or but at the end of the day, there was something that over the course of the 4 years I haven't done enough. Because if I left no doubt or zero doubt,
right,
we wouldn't have had this conversation. Whatever it was, that little bit of something, and I'm sure it was a small detail, towards the end, when you make those decisions, when it's kind of, maybe the last game or the last couple games, maybe I could have done something special where you kind of put the doubt and you say, you know what, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go the other way. But I never asked. What's the point? Nothing comes even close.
It has to be devastating. It's like, you say,
for a kid like me at that time from Europe, because I think, I'm not saying it would have been different for somebody that was born here, but the culture that we've had, my background of my father, do you know what I mean? Where when you're a kid in Europe in 70s and 80s, there isn't anything bigger than a World Cup. People now try to tell me that the Champions League is bigger. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
No little kid, plays, in their street, going one-on-one with their buddy and says 90th minute Maracana Stadium, or Old Trafford. No, it's always the Maracana. It's always the big name, and you're scoring the winning goal in the 90th minute of the World Cup, of the final of the World Cup. And so for me, when that hit, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'll tell you, Janusz, and those were the times, because I started as a young kid with Śląsk Wrocław, and especially at the time, because I grew up watching in 1982. I remember, because I was very young, and then 1986 I remember very well. Like the World Cup was almost like the biggest thing in the world. Like you were waiting for it
It
in
still is. It still
months,
is.
you know?
It
Yeah, but
still
even
is.
and that culture, like, that was because there was nothing else. It was like something very, very special. Those and Polish national team was just 82, 86 at the, you know, especially 82. They were at the top of their game, and they finished third in the World Cup, and it even magnified the feeling in Poland where we grew up.
Yeah, I don't think there's a sport or there's anything in the world of sports that comes even remotely close. I mean, you know, I'm not saying close, even you know,
Remotely.
it just isn't. You can talk to me about any sport. You can talk to me about football. You can talk, but I think this is because it's global, because it's one time where the whole country, if they like football or not,
Right.
they'll watch it because it's patriotic. It's players who are born in this country. Right now, every so often you have, of course, even my example, you know, you have players that maybe weren't born, but, you know, 99% of your team is people from that country. And like I said, I think people love football everywhere, but there are people that are not necessarily everyday fans, right? I mean, even maybe in, I don't know, Germany or some places, right? They know football, they like it, but they can live without it. But when it comes to that, everybody kind of comes together, and nobody will ever tell me, although many try, that there's bigger sport anywhere in the world or comes close to it, because it doesn't.
I know, because to me, the World Cup is bigger than the Olympics, which includes soccer as a sport in the Olympics. The World Cup to me is bigger than the entire Olympics, and it's like
correct. Although I will tell you that the Olympics is probably the only thing that comes close in terms of that patriotism, because that's important, right? And I also will tell you that at least Olympics would come, as I said, nothing comes even remotely close, but Olympics would, if, for example, everyone was able to play. You know, if you could put a team, your best team in the Olympics, I think it will come. So look at our women. Look at how we respond to our women's national team when they play in the Olympics. Makes no difference, Olympics or World Cup, right? And I think there's a lot to be said about Olympics. I for one, short of the World Cup, I would love to be part of the Olympics. I think, to me, that's on the same level as the World Cup. It's just that men's soccer isn't the same.
Right. I just think soccer is so huge that it rivals an event that includes every sport in the world.
For sure.
Like ones you never heard of, major ones you heard of. It's the time for like track and field, and that's their time. And you know, when I watch the World Cup, you know, I'm definitely, and maybe I'm biased, I'm definitely more interested. I'm still stoked and excited for the Olympics, but the World Cup is like just a pinnacle to me.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I won't argue with you on that.
Yeah. I guess there's two questions I want to ask before we go into the present. And so one of them is like, so you kind of touched on it. So what makes a good coach?
And I'll build on that question, because that's the question I wanted to ask. Because Bora Milutinovic, such a mysterious figure, he led so many different national teams into the World Cup, and he led them during the World Cup. But you barely hear about him as a coach, like what type of coach he was. You know, you hear about him working with all those different exotic sometimes teams, but you never really think what type of coach he was, what kind of football he preferred. Was he a tactical guy, not a tactical guy, more like a glue guy, more like a friendly guy?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, a manager of characters, right? That's the most important thing. And we see that more and more because, you know, let's face it, I mean, I'm in the business right now, and I'm a lot more interested in tactics now, and I read them than I was before, because before, I think that, you know, tactics were limited. I think players were trusted to kind of, here's who we're playing, here's what we got to do, and go on, right? When I see now, or even Major League Soccer, when I see what coaches do in terms of video preparation, analytics now, right? I mean, it's just a different level. It's so, you know, in the past, I see players sometimes talking about 10, 15, 20 years from now, come on. I mean, there was no tactics. There really wasn't, other than the simple, here's your shape, right? Here's the players that you need to pay attention. We want you to go through so-and-so. When that happens, very, very basics. And I think, even more so back then, those managers, I don't think were as great in terms of their tactical vision. There were, of course, but I think I'm getting a huge echo.
I'm good. I don't hear one.
That's weird for me. What happened? So I think, there's always the Arrigo Sacchi. I mean, I was able to play against that great Milan team in, I think it was 91, 92. And of course, he was spectacular as a manager. But I think when I see it now, and even back then, it was the managers understood their players and trusted them, the best teams anywhere, right? And others managers saying, listen, you don't know anything. I know everything. You better listen. And that works with some and doesn't work with others. And I guess, empathy is important. Knowing you players, that was something that I didn't encounter during my play. And I could tell you stories, and Martin knows them, from Polish, coaches in Poland. They didn't care. You were just a worker, right? I mean, there was no different really to play for the Polish first division team than pretty much, being a coal miners going down the shaft. You know what I mean? That's your job. You better do it. I don't care what's happening in your home. I don't care if you're happy or unhappy. I don't care if you have a problem or you don't. Your job is to show up here and give me what I want. And unfortunately, I think many others would say the same. Now, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think the coaching, just like players, are evolving. But I think, when I look at now, not just at soccer coaches, but some of the best coaches, of course, baseball or basketball, and I think those that understood early the psychology of the game and how important it is, those are perhaps some of the greatest coaches that you can name immediately. Phil Jackson, when you watch this again, for a period of time where we watch it, right? I mean, he just sort of understood, right? He knew who the star was. He knew how to. I don't remember coaches like that where I could say, you know what? They tick all the boxes. They care if I do this. They care how I feel. They care what's happening in my life. They maybe ask, why am I not playing so well, today? Is some up at home, or is it? So unfortunately, not to say that I didn't have good coaches, but Bora was kind of, like you said, Bora was able to come in, deal with different personalities in 4 or 5 different countries. He was kind of like, here's a job for 3 or 4 years, right? Get it done. And although I think he did a pretty good job, I don't think that he understood all of us. And, there was a language barrier with him as well. And maybe people, the people that spoke Spanish benefited from it. I sort of benefited from it because I understood when he was talking in Yugoslavian with everybody else, right? But I think at the time, I wish, when I see him now, I haven't seen him for a while. I used to see him a lot more, but he didn't trust the American players. He didn't think that we knew. That was a big problem with a couple of the players that ultimately didn't make it either. I'm not talking about myself, because they held it against him, because he kind of came from, I've been here, this is a new sport, soccer, the game is not in your blood, it's not in your culture, this is how it was, right? I mean, from his tedious explanation of the simplest things that most of the people got. So, but to be fair to him, I mean, he did have a tough job, right? I mean, to come in to basically a team that's
the whole thing
for a World Cup. So I don't want to make too many excuses for him as well, because I don't think it was, but yeah, it was fragmented. But ultimately, let's be fair, he put it together enough that I think the team was very successful in that World Cup.
Extremely successful and surprisingly successful.
And that's why I want to give him credit, Martin. I don't want to take it away from him.
No. But it's interesting because I kind of rewatched parts of that World Cup. How how lucky in a way United States team, but well organized. You have to admit, well organized. They were well organized. But this game against Colombia that got them out of the group, because the other two results were a draw against Switzerland, I think, and they lost to Romania. So it's based on the Colombia game they advanced, where they lost to Brazil in the last 16. Actually playing pretty good game. I think it was the best game in the World Cup, the one they lost against Brazil. And the game against Colombia, they were extremely lucky because Colombia was clearly dominating, and then they scored an own goal, and then they got countered in the second goal for United States. So yeah, but
that was the famous Escobar goal. Huh?
Escobar goal,
yeah. That's great. And then another question before we go into the present, like what's some of the U.S. players that you played with or even came into camp, on that first time in camp?
Oh yeah, that was the 90. Well, I mean, some of the foreign players that were in Europe already weren't there, but eventually they came back, and I played with them as well in preparation. Tab Ramos, he was in Spain at the time. John Harkes was at Sheffield Wednesday. He came in. I mean, I still played with him because they came in early. Can't remember, a year before, or 6 months before. So I still got to play with them. I mean, Tab Ramos is an exceptional player that doesn't get enough ink. Now we talk about, we often forget. I mean, he was a spectacular player. He really was.
He got elbowed by Leonardo in that.
Leonardo in that Brazil game, broke his skull. Obviously, when you Eric Winalda, who again, Eric, of course, happy-go-lucky, can be controversial as a pundit, and now he's a coach and all that, but a tremendous individual and a tremendous player. One of the toughest forwards. We talk about the Clint Dempseys of the world now, and Brian McBride, they're tough. I mean, Eric Ronaldo, he had something that terrible to defend. I mean, he had that one great season in the Bundesliga. Was it at Saarbrücken or maybe with somebody else when he first came in there? But again, scoring the first goal in Major League Soccer, scoring that wonderful free kick in the World Cup against Switzerland, right? Going ahead, Roy Hodgson was the manager of Switzerland back then. So Eric, one of those players that you say to yourself, wow, right? I mean, Fernando Clavijo, of course, unfortunately he's passed away last year. Paul Caligiuri, who scored that famous goal to get the United States to the World Cup in Italy against Trinidad and Tobago, which was massively important. I mean, if it's not for that, who knows? Maybe the '94 World Cup never happens in the United States. Probably wouldn't, but anyway, it was an important one because I think the decision was already made, but you always want the team that's going to host the next World Cup be in the World Cup previously, right? So massive. So I mean, all the names,
Lalas,
Alexi Lalas, Roy Wegerle, Chris Henderson. I mean, the list. I'm not going to go who played in '94. All those guys I've played for. There wasn't a player that I wasn't in camp over the 4 years. Claudio Reyna, young but already. Just incredible the way he thought the game, and now it's great to see Gio Reyna. Who knows? Maybe next weekend he'll play for Dortmund when Bundesliga starts. Kobe Jones, all those guys. I mean,
I like Ernie Stewart.
Ernie, of course, we can't forget Ernie. Yeah, played with him many games because he came here early from Holland. So,
and so now we're in this coronavirus time, and we mentioned it earlier about like what's the MLS plans to start up, because we have the Korean League started because they handled the virus like pretty effectively, and Bundesliga is about to start up. But what's the MLS plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no playbook, is there? I mean, for United States, the one thing that's different from Europe is, look how vast this is, right? I mean, look how difficult it is to decide for Premier League teams or even from Bundesliga, small countries, right? It's like, 50 Germanys and of course the virus is at different stages in different places. So it's a lot easier. Not only that, I mean, you look at Major League Soccer, you could travel. I mean, how do you even get on the plane and the distances that you travel? That's not happening anywhere. You jump on the bus in any country and you isolate it on the bus, right? All the Bundesliga teams are in hotels right now. Then they'll get on the bus, no problem. they'll play. So when you think about it, it seems impossible. So, there are rumors out there that obviously, I think if it restarts, it's going to be in one place. I don't think you're going to see teams playing at home and away or in their own stadiums.
At one place?
I would think that if this is going to happen, it's going to be some form of a tournament, or it all depends when it starts, right? We're getting to a level where I can't imagine the entire season. You can't squeeze that in, but I wouldn't be surprised, yes, if this was a league being played in one region, if you will, because you can't travel. You're going to have to put teams somewhere, as I said. Flights across the country, or even within the Western Division or Eastern, is just impossible. That's just too much risk, and nobody's gonna okay that and go for that. So if it does happen, I foresee that happening in one region. Be it Florida. Some rumors out there, maybe you go to Arizona or something like that, where, it's sort of like preseason for Major League Soccer, right? A lot of teams go to Florida, play against each other, or Arizona, or wherever it may be. That's the only way I see it.
The good thing is the schedule, because the MLS technically can stretch even to January. They can stretch the season even to January if they want to, where European leagues, they have the dilemma, what if better it's to cancel the season and start the next season eventually? Like, they already canceled in Holland. They're going to cancel in Belgium in the next few days. They already canceled in France, and actually gave
and remember, we used to complain about schedule here. Everybody's asking, Major League Soccer should play the same way as Europe, right? And now it's beneficial. Not to say that in general, the system, the closed system now, is being and will be replicated or duplicated in Europe. Because look, Major League Soccer, there are many faults with that system, and many people don't like it, but look what's happening in Europe. I've said it many months ago that you're going to see salary cap in Europe. You're going to see trades, just like they're happening already to some degree. You're going to see more and more of that because of not just the consequences, but I think it's impossible for some, to continue to pay 100, 200 million pounds or euros or dollars for players. So you're going to see that. And now you're going to see Major League Soccer, who's surviving this period relatively well because of the owners, right? They're all billionaires, but it's strength in numbers, right? You benefit when things are good, and you share the risk when things are bad, just like NFL, just like any other sports. And I just think that it's something that Europe in particular is going to have to look into it. And I don't want to just name this MLS system. We're in soccer, so we're talking about it. But, the sort of system that we see in all major sports in the United States, with the exception probably of the promotion and relegation. I don't foresee that happening, in Europe soon anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just one last thing I'm going to throw in regarding the virus. Because we talked about the World Cups and those memories from childhood, watching the 1986, 1990, 1982. And, one of the best memories from those times is all those colorful fans, close together in huge stadiums. And in Maracana, they had 200,000 people watching the World Cup final in 1950. I'm worried those days are gone forever with 100,000 people in stadiums. I'm really worried about that.
I hope you're wrong. Look, I'm glass half full type of guy, a little bit, maybe naive, and I'll tell you why. Because first of all, it's easy for me to say that because, like anything that's controversial in the world, right? Unless it happens to you, you don't care, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I think you're great and all of that, right? Because fortunately, I've been healthy. Everybody in my family have been healthy. If it wasn't the case, then maybe I'm thinking differently. But just in general, I think we'll come back. These diseases have happened in the past. They're going to happen again. I think, we as humans, we'll fight that. And I think we'll see that. I'm not saying this is going to be soon. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, Bundesliga starts next weekend without fans. If next, couple games are fine, there's going to be 80,000 people watching Borussia Dortmund. That's not what I'm saying. But gradually, I think we'll come back because eventually things, because I think we're made to have fun together, to go to these events. And I think, we have to responsibly push for it. You'll never hear a scenario for me that, forever we're gonna, and I don't want to say, that's your opinion, and maybe you're right. I don't know.
I mean, I hope you're right. I 100% hope you're right. But do you think that Euro 2021 will have fans?
I do.
Okay, good.
I mean, I have no reason not to think that, right? Because I'm thinking that we're going to have some sort of drugs that, I don't know if there's going to be one. Look, I mean, we haven't eradicated. I mean, what have we eradicated? Smallpox, and that's it, right? I mean, this is a much, 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 much worse flu. By the way, I'm not a doctor here, so I don't know where this goes, and maybe I'm going already too far, but there are different strains of flus. This happens to be much worse. But I think in time, I always trust that the scientists around the world, will find a way. And I think I will give you this, there are going to be a lot of people that won't want to take that risk, and I think we ought to respect that. But I think there's going to be just as many that are going to say they're going to make an educated decision at that stage, knowing what's available out there, if it's worth the risk. But I do hope that there's going to be, we'll be back at this. I shouldn't say when, because I have zero idea and zero education when it comes to,
But if I could make one bet, Janusz, if I could make one bet that is pretty sure bet, I think that's 100% game over on media in the locker rooms. I think that's gone.
That may not be a bad thing, actually. Even though I'm part of the media now, but nobody enjoys that. I know it's important to the fans and it's good, and I'm okay with it. But yeah, that's one part that I don't think too many are going to cry about.
I mean, well, just to go back to Martin's original question about asking you, he feels like what did you say, the Americana Stadium was packed.
The Maracanã, I think he meant in Brazil, yeah.
Martin's full of doom and gloom. Like, all he does is news.
No, but it's...
And then I said, Martin, stop sending me bad coronavirus news. So he stops, and then he sends me killer hornets news.
Oh, no, you're not the kind. See?
Martin, it's still bad news. Don't send me any. Then he sends me something other kind of. So that's why, that's the person you're talking. That's the person who asked you that question.
Look, I mean, I'm not the eternal optimist. I'm not the one that always sees everything positive. No, I'm not. But I just think in this one, maybe I'm a little bit skeptical in the sense that I just truly believe that our habits, what makes us happy, because ultimately we'll want to reward ourselves. And part of the reward system, I think, for human being is, that's it. Sporting events or concerts, whatever it is, if you're a music fan, you're going to want to try to do everything to get to that level. And a lot of that level, it's psychological, just like anything. For players too, right? I mean, the psychology of the game now, if I knew what I know now when I was a player, my goodness, I would have been in that World Cup and I would have been way, way better, right? Because it takes some time, some perspective, some maybe, I mean, me looking at the games as on a tactical level as a pundit now is something that I never did as a player.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I look at it, yeah, coach showed me video, okay, well, whatever, right? I mean, not that I dismissed it, but now the way I analyze the game, or even when I was a coach, the way I coach kids, some technical things, right, or decision making, I often catch myself saying, my goodness, if I were able to tell this to myself, or if somebody was able to get to me in that way, just like that, I would have been a better player. So same here. I just trust that I think we're all going to want to get back to that. And in the end, it's just like anything. It's going to be less about, I mean, medicine is going to be important for it, right? But psychology is going to be the biggest thing. And, so I'm going to try to be positive. But again, I want to underline, if it happened to me, maybe I'd be singing a different tune.
And just to finish,
yeah. I just think that we're like resourceful human beings, and like even, having those packed stadiums wasn't a thing before they were packed stadiums. Like, we grew to that, we created that. And if we're not able to go back to that, we'll create something, or people will create things just as good or maybe even better as a way to go around it, just to recreate that atmosphere.
Here's how I'm going to end this particular one. There's too many people that almost kind of cheer against it to happen with no knowledge whatsoever. Just as I don't have knowledge, medical knowledge, to know if it can happen and when will it happen, those same people that kind of say, well, it's almost like I had a conversation because I was looking at Bundesliga restarting, and we've seen already a couple players at Dynamo Dresden, right? It's almost as if you're going out of your way to look for reasons to make you point that you shouldn't do it, which, by the way, may be a valid point, but I'm not going to go out of my way to convince myself, never mind others, that this can be successful and it won't pass. That's the only point I want to make about that there's no reason to go out of your way to hope that the restart of whatever it may be won't happen, right? Now, it's question of timing, right? That's why I understand what Martin's saying. Because look, I mean, I don't know if next weekend for Bundesliga is the right thing to do. It seems fast, but,
By the way, did you see Lewandowski's trick during the training yesterday? It's online today. It's the #1 hit. The things that he was doing with the ball. Oh my God!
Yeah, but I think that's an old one. But that's an old one. I think so. I've seen that. I think you see his TikTok though, the one when he was dancing.
Yeah. No, but Janusz, just to close the fans thing, I asked also partially because I listen to Bill Simmons on Ringer all the time when he does his podcast, because I find them very entertaining. And they had discussion with Ryan Russillo from ESPN about the UFC tournament that they had without fans. It was 100% TV production. Like, the way they did the whole event, it was cut down for TV fans. And they're like, oh, it's actually working. That might be the future of sports. They don't need actual fans that would create this experience.
Nothing exists without fans. I mean,
I agree with you, but I'm just saying.
People will settle for this for a week or 2 or 3 because they know that it's impossible to do it otherwise. But I think for sports to survive without fans, it's impossible. I would make a bet on that. It's absolutely impossible for it to happen. I mean, what's the point? What's the point of it, right?
Well,
I mean, the energy you get.
The players talking during the game, that you can, you have you can hear coaches giving directions. Those are the points. I agree with you.
You've gone crazy. It's, you can, the TV can easily mic up players, which they do, right? You can still, with the fans, you can hear what they're saying if that's what they choose to do. But I mean, watching sports without fans, without the energy that players feel, the pressure that players feel, the great players that can overcome the pressure, the weaker players that could never play in front of the 80,000 as well as their talent. I mean, that's what sports is all about. It would be like eating ice cream through glass. I mean,
I agree with you 100%. Just trying to feel you out on that,
But, you talk about the pressure that a weaker player feels in front of 80,000 people. Like, some players who are weaker players might play better in an empty stadium. They might just outshine themselves and go forward.
Yeah, but they still won't come to the level of a player like Messi, who in front of the fans can, so yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not saying that some players wouldn't benefit. I'm just saying that this play, that's not the premise of a sporting event, to see if a weaker player can perform a little bit better. But I just think it's, it's the energy. I mean, I don't even know why we're having this conversation. It's a comedy channel. That's why. Well, but we haven't been comical, so maybe
comedy channel. But we try to go as deep as possible.
No. I mean? I hear you. I hope that day never comes, by the way.
I mean, are you excited for next weekend? Are you going to watch the games in the Bundesliga?
Oh, I will, but yeah, it's not going to be the same for me. No matter how I am, because we haven't seen any games. I said to myself right away, no disrespect, but I wasn't going to watch a second of the league in Belarus. I have zero interest in that, and I've been good. I haven't seen any of it. I know the K League started the other day. I didn't watch any of it. So I'll watch this because I know the level is going to be very good. But again, I have a feeling that maybe after this weekend, I'm going to really, or maybe even during this weekend, I'm going to really recognize how much defense are being missed. And knowing myself, I'm going to say, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. I mean, I'd watch it as Dortmund against Schalke. It's a big derby, of course,
Yeah.
you know, and there's some other games. I'm a big.
But you'll miss fans even more on that one because there is so much history between fans of Dortmund and Schalke. I used to be the broadcaster from Bundesliga for 2 years in Poland before I moved to the United States in 2008. And those games were like, you wanted to get that game to work play by play because you knew that atmosphere would be phenomenal.
Yeah,
and that's the best atmosphere in Germany, the Dortmund versus Schalke, because
in all honesty, you know, Union Berlin. I'm a big Union Berlin against Bayern Munich. That's a big one. But anyway, because I work on it, I'll watch it. And I'll probably watch more simply because I have to rather than I want to. Because if I didn't, I pick maybe 1 or 2 games, you know what I mean? Maybe. And the rest, I said, forget about it. But I'll watch it because it's part of my job. I need to know, and who knows where it goes, right? And all of that. But atmosphere is, right? Those goosebumps, right? I mean, you don't have to be a player to feel it. You know, how often when we watch international football, national team, and the whole stadium sings, or the singing of the fans, or just the reaction, you know, when the team does some good and they get near the goal where you can hear that, right? You don't have to watch the game, but you know something's about to happen because the voice of the commentator or just the fans. I don't know what my reaction is going to be, and I don't want to go with preconceived notions, but I think, as you can tell, I'm already skeptical. I hope this ends very soon without fans. I'll take it in the absence of what we have.
Yeah, I'll take it. And, you know, it's like when you're hungry, if somebody feeds you like a piece of shit in between a slice of bread, you're like, all right, I'll eat it because it's bread. But, you know, when you're not hungry, you're not going to eat that. You know what I mean?
Like snack. It's like a snack for lunch. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Like having a snack.
You know, again, it's one of those where we're going to watch it because we love the football, but there's going to be a large amount of people that are going to watch it for what I was talking a little bit earlier. I almost have a feeling it's always like, is it going to fail? Like, is somebody going to say it's, you know what I mean? It's almost because it happens so quickly. Right. I'm going to watch for you know, the psychology of it. I'm going to watch the little things that are happening between the players, what's happening on the benches, because that's going to be different. But that's something that you don't normally pay attention to, right?
Right. I mean, I'm going to watch it for a lot of reasons. For the ones that you just mentioned, there's so many reasons to watch it. It's because the reasons you just mentioned, like how different it's going to be, because I'm starved for football and I love football, so I'll take it in any form right now. Also, to see if it works, because if it works, this is a template, because it's Germany, and Germany are like, you know, stereotypically seen as precision people. And if you want something built right, like one of the places to go is Germany. So the Bundesliga starting up, even though the K-League is started, like gives you the ultimate hope for football of the future right now. Like German soccer this weekend is going to be the beacon for what's going to happen for the future of football. So no matter what game you're watching all these things all at the same time in that one game. And like they're playing for the world. They're playing for the game, you know? So it's just crazy. Like, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be a big psychological factor for a lot of people around the world, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. How is your job now that there's been no soccer? Like, have you been working still, or
yeah, I haven't done anything for ESPN and since it started. You know, I'm appreciative that they're still paying me for staying at home, but obviously commentating games, I mean, there are no games to commentate, right? So I haven't done that. I have done a lot of these, you know, interviews, Sirius Radio. I still do bits and pieces here and there, although my show has been off because I do the Premier League show on Monday, so they're not playing. But, you know, being part of other shows sometimes, and, you know, the creative content that everyone's looking for, creating stuff for that. But other than that, you know, I haven't really, my true work I haven't done because there's no games, and you know, I usually do Serie A, some other leagues. Bundesliga is coming to us from Fox next season, but you know, we haven't had a Bundesliga.
ESPN is getting the Bundesliga next season?
Yeah, this is the
Oh, I
last.
didn't know.
This is the last one. Whatever they're going to finish on Fox, and then next 6 years, I think ESPN takes over Bundesliga. So
Where are they going to put it? Are they going to put it on that ESPN channel that nobody has? That they like? There's this. Tell me they're not going to put
no,
it
I
on
think
ESPN.
it's been out there, and my chain. But no, right now it's an ESPN Plus. It's an online with I think 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know exact number of games will be on television. The big games, right? And the Bayern Munich, Dortmunds, and all that. But you never know. That may change, right? Because it's just like our Serie A. It's on ESPN Plus, but there's game a week, so that can evolve. But yeah, it's coming to ESPN Plus mainly.
I don't have
That's
Plus.
not news. I mean, that's been out there for a little bit, so I'm not breaking or giving away any secrets.
No, I just don't have Plus, and I don't want to have to pay for something else.
But look, I mean, I'm going to put on a company hat, but I would have done this, by the way, regardless, because what is it, $4.99? If you look what you got there, it's incredible. I mean, between Serie A and Bundesliga and the international games and there are a million games every weekend. So I know that it's part of, if you cut this, and it adds up, but for $4.99, if you go to ESPN Plus and see the offerings, Major League Soccer, Serie A, and all the Nations Cup and every league you can almost think of, it's out there. Even if I didn't work for ESPN, I think that's probably the first service I get. Now I'm in this bit, right? I mean, I'm in soccer. First place I go for $5 to get thousands of games every season. Be no brainer.
I mean, I'm already paying for so much all over the place for different things, including soccer. Like, cause I get most. So I already have ESPN. So just as a person, it's like to have ESPN, but not have the
I know
ESPN.
Martin is a bit, but there's other stuff that you have because you have college football, college basketball, you have NBA probably on ESPN Plus, right? Martin, you're an NBA guy. I mean, I know it's on ESPN and ABC, but there's probably some games that are on it. ESPN Plus is all sports. It's not just soccer. So
No. But all I would want it for is soccer.
ESPN Plus. I know that I watch all the Poland games because if there is a very obscure game, let's say Poland plays Kazakhstan, I know it's going to be there.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, again, this is not me talking about my company. It's just it seems to me that for $5, it's a no-brainer.
No, it sounds worth it. You just always hope. I'm always hoping not to spend more money.
Well, I mean, I still haven't cut the cord. I mean, I'm paying a lot for cable, and I'm still paying for some. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Everybody tells me that it's going just for streaming and all that. Maybe I'm old school. I'm a little bit older, so it's harder for me to get. I don't like the prices I'm paying for cable, but I like the premise much better than streaming. Still much simpler in a way. It comes right away. There's no delays. There's, which channel, right? So, but that's probably part of me being a little bit old school in all of that. But yeah, it seems to me that, all the young kids, my son is old. I mean, he doesn't have cable. Hasn't had it for I don't know how long. He just streams things. So.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you long, but I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. Learned a lot of great insight. And, we'll watch the Bundesliga this weekend and see how it goes. Is there anything you want to plug or say before you get off?
No, it was fun. We should talk about the games,
Yeah.
No, I mean, just ESPN and Sirius XM. Those are the only places that I'm currently employed. So I want to give him a shout because, in these days, without doing anything, of course I would say that, but they're doing the right thing, right? I mean, they're sticking by us, and hopefully they'll stay that way because as we see around the world, many talented people that we all know from Twitter or elsewhere, even more talented than we are losing jobs. So that's not cool. So certainly I want to give him a plug for those reasons.
Great, man. And much, congratulations on all your success, much continued success, like to grow up, playing the game that you love and making a living from it and supporting your family, during the game and after your playing days is amazing. So it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me on. This was enjoyable. Where did the time go, huh? I mean, that's crazy.
It was a great conversation, man. It's just like
Yeah, no, it's cool. Just nice and easy. Good. Martin,
Yeah.
see, I told you this would work. I knew this. You know, by the way, this is going to get, this is the new forum, right? I mean, look how many pundits are going to be born through, you know, Zoom or whatever platform you have, right? Because I mean, anybody can watch that now. And, you know, just think about, you know, I think about it in a way, it's like how many people that are well respected right now, and I want to give them credit for that. Like when Twitter first started, I remember a lot of guys as just Twitter guys. They were just everyday people, if you will, that loved the game. And now all of a sudden they're employed by so many big organizations, and they're big names in our game, right? They stuck with it, just sort of like a little bit of luck, just like me being a player, right? So that's the way it's supposed to, right? It's supposed to be. So I think that this that we're doing here, you know, I'm sure you've done a million times. Look, a month ago, I had zero idea what Zoom was. I really did. I mean, I use Skype and some of the other, but you know, and here we are. You can talk with 50 people and all that. So amazing. Yeah. Maybe this is the future.
I learned about Zoom the day after quarantine. I learned about quarantine. It's like there's coronavirus, quarantine, then Zoom. That order, and it's been constant.
Something like this will catch on, though. No matter what happens, what we talked about, you know, stadiums, scoring fans, this, whatever you think, what's coming out of this, that I think you're going to see a lot of television program, a lot of people using this platform, and it's good because I think it's going to open up the, you know, more punditry. Some people getting a chance that would have otherwise never gotten it. So that's a positive.
No, for sure. Martin, anything you want to plug? Thanks for.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I write for 442, and I spoke. It was actually a long conversation with Jerzy Dudek. We spoke almost 3 hours. And
nice.
He'll take you to the locker room of the Champions League final, famous Champions League final of the 2000.
I was there. I was covering that game. I was behind the goal. I was covering that game for ESPN.
Oh, nice.
I'm a Liverpool fan, you know. So and and I love my Milan too. It was conflicted because they played again the night following year.
Yeah.
That was the time when with ESPN we traveled, so I was at both games. But amazing thing with.
Did you go to the event after the game? They had this event in the hotel. Did you go there?
No. You know about television, right? By the time we got out of there, was like 5 hours after the game. You know, I mean, television is not done when it's just done, right? I mean, we had to do so many things and. By the time we got out, I didn't go anywhere other than, you know, Istanbul was tremendous. I remember there was a place open, like 3 or 4. Derek Ray, myself, and Tommy Smith. We ended up finally having a drink, but it was, oh my God, it was so late. It was crazy late, like in the morning, just about.
Is Tommy Smith a Spurs fan, by the way?
I'm sorry?
Is Tommy Smith a Spurs fan or not?
No, he's a United fan.
Oh, he's a United fan. Okay.
Oh, come on. Maybe
you found that out at the end of the show.
I know. Yeah, that's all right. I mean, I don't get, you know, I mean, these days you have to. In my job, you have to be, you know, you can't be biased. But yeah, I mean, no, Tommy's, you know, I don't even know when he used to work at ESPN, he would never admit it. Everybody knew, and he was like, you could never say anything bad about United. These days, I think he admits to it, but.
Why didn't he admit it?
Because I don't know. It's just his psyche, you know. Like he wanted to appear unbiased, but he was totally biased towards Manchester United. Just as I was, you know, when it came to it, you know, I would show my Liverpool bias to some degree, but you know, which we all do. But he hit it. I remember that.
That's funny. There's other questions I want to ask you, but I want to have you back again and ask.
Let's do it again.
Now that I know that you're at the AC Milan Liverpool Champions League finals, you know, just to get the experience on like both of those finals is crazy.
Yeah, Istanbul, what a place! I don't know. Martin's been, I'm sure. What a place. The other one was that in Athens, right? The second one was in Athens. That was cool, but not.
Yeah.
Second one, I think, was in Athens, right?
I think so. I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
So our sets were amazing because then after that we went to Paris and we did the Arsenal against Barcelona.
Yep.
But Messi he was there, but he didn't play. Those were the 3 in a row that we did, and ESPN went crazy. I mean, like Istanbul, we were on top of the hotel between the Blue Mosque and the Sophia Mosque with the Bosphorus. It was amazing set outside.
Yeah.
In Athens, we did in one of the in the ruins. What's the name? I can't think of it. And in Paris, we did on Champs-Élysées, outdoors too, on top of the building. Just amazing sets they built. So the scenics, like, you know, but the one in Istanbul, nothing beats that, because Istanbul to me is one of the best cities in the world. It really is. It's an amazing place. If you haven't been, trust me.
I haven't been, and definitely will check it out.
Okay,
so
guys.
Thank you for coming through. I'll post this. I'm gonna ask. I'll ask you that after. But everybody watching, listening, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Enjoy the Bundesliga this weekend. Check out the K-League if you have a chance or opportunity. There was one amazing goal scored in the K-League game this weekend. It was like a backheel in the flow of play.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen it.
It was dope, and it was a packed stadium type of goal. And but yeah, so let's talk all next week, guys, when Bundesliga back, and we'll see how it feels. The new normal.
Good.
I love y'all. Take care of yourselves. Be good. And thank you again, Martin and Janusz. Hope I said that right. Thank you.
Good enough. Ciao.